In this video, I'm going to be going through what you're going to need if you want to buy a Betta fish. So the first section that I'm going to go through are essentials. So basically, these are the things you absolutely need if you want to get a Betta fish. And also, before I talk about this, I know that there are some people who go out and get the fish first and then they buy the things that they need. I really recommend against that. I think you should be fully prepared first because a lot of things can go wrong and you can end up really harming your fish, or it can end up dying as well if you don't have the things you need before. So please don't go and buy your Betta fish, then get all the things you need because it can put it through unnecessary harm. So the first thing I'm going to talk about that you need to get is a tank. So that's pretty obvious. So I'm going to say the minimum, the very minimum, is 3 gallons. Now, people will say you can keep them in smaller tanks. Well, even 3 gallons is pretty small. The minimum I keep them in personally is 5 gallons. But the reason being is because, for several reasons. One, in the wild, they actually live in very large bodies of water. It is shallow, but they're very long. Like, they go on for, like they're very long. And that's the natural habitat, so you want to mimic that as much as possible. So if you really have to, if you really have to, get 3 gallons, but 5 gallons or more is preferred. And another thing about smaller ones, about smaller tanks, is that they're harder to maintain in terms of things like cycling the tank and also heating the tank. Like, there are more fluctuations in that sense. So that's why a bigger tank is better. And they're not that expensive. I think you can, on things like Gumtree, or in the US, it's Craigslist or something, you can get 5 gallons for free or for like $10. You just have to make sure they don't have leaks. So yeah, you should really get at least 5 gallons. Now, the other thing, you should make sure that they have a lid. This is because Betta fish can and will, well, they won't will, but they can and might jump out of the water. Usually, if they do jump, it could be that your water parameters aren't suitable. It might be like, something in the tank. Maybe you have high ammonia levels or something and your fish is trying to get out. So if you do find that your fish is trying to jump out, you might want to check if there's anything with your tank that's making the fish want to get out. So, and the next thing is, I just want to say, please don't use a bowl. Reason being, 1, bowls are usually small, so you can't really put much in them, and 2, it's also difficult to put in things like a heater or a filter because of the curved surface, and 3, they will disorientate your fish because, think about it, the glass is curved, and so your fish is just going to see distorted images, and it's really going to hurt its eyes. I've read, I'm not 100% sure, but it does seem, it does make sense that your fish's eyes can get damaged. They can, it can damage their eyesight if you have them in the bowl, because all they're going to see is just warped images, and they're not going to see a normal image as they might see from a straight pane of glass. So you should get a tank that has straight sides. So the next essential is a heater. Now, yes, these are essential, reason being because they are tropical fish. This means that they are adapted, or they are just naturally live in warm temperatures. So you're going to want to get an adjustable heater. Don't get a preset heater. Reason being because you want to be able to change the temperature. And if you get one that you can't change, you might need to change it for some reason or other. Maybe you're treating a disease that you need to put up or put down the temperature. Or maybe it gets stuck on a temperature that you don't want it to be. Just get an adjustable one. It will avoid a lot of problems getting an adjustable one. And you want to keep the temperature at around 78 Fahrenheit. don't put it any lower than 75 because that's cold, and about any higher than 82 is too high probably. So also you're gonna have to think about how many watts you want your heater to be. If you live in a warm area, I live in Australia, so it's warm half the year and cooler the other half of the year, but it doesn't even get that cold compared to other countries. So in my 6-gallon, I use a 25 watt heater, and this goes very good. It works good to heat up the tank. If you live in a colder area, like if you live somewhere where it snows or gets to minus, you're going to want a stronger heater. You're going to want 50 watts for, like, say, a 5-gallon. So that's for a 5-gallon. You can look up for your tank size what would be preferable for your tank, because a bigger tank will need a stronger heater. So I'm just going to change this to 5 to make it less confusing, but yeah. So yeah, bigger tank is going to need more watts because there's more water, and it just needs to be stronger. And of course, what's the point of having an adjustable heater if you don't have a thermometer? So you need a thermometer to read the temperature. So you have to make sure that your temperature is not too high and not too low. And also, this is good to make sure your heater works. What's the point if you don't know if your heater's working? So if you've got your heater set to like 78 Fahrenheit, but the thermometer is reading at like 65, then obviously there's something wrong with your heater. But just remember that when you first put in the thermometer, like when you're setting up your tank, it can take a while to for your heater to actually heat it up to the heat the water up. So that's why you might have to wait a few hours before it starts reading the right temperature. So the next essential thing, well, actually some people say this isn't really essential, but in my opinion, it's highly recommended. It's a very good idea that you have a filter. Now, there are several reasons. One is the obvious reason. It helps to clean the tank, or like keep it clean in general. So that's very important. And the other thing is that the beneficial bacteria build up in the filter. I'll talk about cycling and beneficial bacteria in another video, but basically the beneficial bacteria is the bacteria that lives in your tank, which is essential. Like, if you don't have this, if you don't have a filter and the bacteria, you're going to be doing water changes like every day or something. So it's really, you really need that. They do build up in other parts of the tank, but the filter would also make oxygen as well. And they need oxygen as well. So, anyways, and I'm gonna recommend a sponge filter. You don't need to get a sponge filter, but because there are other ones, but I recommend this because it has a low current. A lot of other filters have a high current, but Betta fish prefer low current. Other filters might push them around and stuff. It's stressful to them. And to make the sponge filter work, you need an air pump, but it's cheap. It's easy to set up. You just put in the along with the air pump, you're gonna need airline tubing, but that's cheap anyways. So you connect the airline tubing to the air pump, and then the other end of the tubing inside the tube on the sponge filter, you just put them in, and then you plug it in, and it starts to work. So yeah, sponge filters are good because of the low current. But if you get an air pump that's cheap, you can find cheap ones. Mine was $8, but it is loud. It can be loud, especially the cheaper ones. But you can kind of muffle the sound with something. Anyways, the next thing is dechlorinator. Now, you have to have dechlorinator. Reason being, well, dechlorinator is used to like detoxify or neutralize or get rid of it. It removes things like chlorine and chloramine, and these are bad for your fish. They can kill your fish if you don't use the dechlorinator. So I would recommend Cetrum Prime. Reason being, because this is especially good for if you, what have I done? If you just started, just finished cycling your tank, or like if you're not 100% sure, like you finished cycling but you've got some, you might have random spikes in ammonia or something. But my point is, it's good because it removes chlorine and chloramine, and not only that, every conditioner should do that, but it also removes ammonia, and it detoxifies nitrites and nitrates. So these are toxic to your fish at certain levels. So that's why it's good, because if you are having possible fluctuations or something's occurred, and so this makes sure that your fish is not going to be affected. And also, if you're cycling your tank, you also need to use a dechlorinator, because the chlorine and all that will kill the beneficial bacteria. So yeah. The next thing you need is a net, and the reason being is because when you get your fish, and after you've acclimated it, you need to put it into the tank, and you don't pour it in. You don't pour the fish into the tank with all that water from the pet shop or wherever you got it from, because in a lot of pet shops, well, at least I know in my pet shop, the water is shared among the other fish, so it's filtered around them all. And if one of the other fish has a disease, this water can carry that disease. It can carry bacteria to other fish and make all the other fish sick. So this is why you need a net. Once you acclimate your fish, you net it out and put it into the water. You don't pour it in. You don't contaminate your tank water. So this is to avoid disease and contamination. Now I'm just gonna confess to something. I did have a net, but when I was trying to put my fish into the tank, I just couldn't catch it, and I got scared because I was stressing it out. I didn't want it to die, so I just put it in, which was the wrong thing to do, because I could have put a disease, but well, at least nothing happened, so I was lucky. So yeah, anyways, the next thing that you need is a liquid testing kit. Now I say liquid because test strips, you might have heard of those, are inaccurate. Well, not necessarily, but they can be inaccurate a lot of the time. In general, just test strips aren't really good to use. So that's why you need a liquid testing kit. They tend to be more accurate. And I would recommend the API Master testing kit. Now this is expensive. I got mine for about $40, but I think you can get it online on Amazon for $18, depending where you live. Now the reason why you need this is to test your water parameters, and this is especially important for cycling and just in general, I guess, because you need to test especially ammonia. You need to be able to test ammonia, nitrites, nitrates, and pH is also important, but it's not so important as the others. So you need to test ammonia. Ammonia and nitrites should be at 0, and nitrates should be at between 20 to 40 maximum. And you get rid of nitrates through water changes. Now this, I would talk about this in another video about cycling your tank. But yeah, you really need to be able to test those. You don't have to get API, you can get cheaper ones, but just make sure that they're liquid test kits, not test strips. Because what's the point if you get the test strips but they're not accurate anyways? So, and about pH, it is important to an extent. You just have to make sure your pH is constant and not in the extremes. I mean, it's okay if your pH is 8. It is a bit high, but if you keep it at 8, that's okay. But if your pH is constantly changing, or if it's on the extreme, you need to try and stabilize it to an appropriate level. And also, just if it's at 8 or something like that, don't try and change it. Reason being because you can really like mess up the other parameters. It can just cause more harm than good. So if it's at an okay level and not extreme, don't try and change it because you can really like mess stuff up. So anyways, oh, the next thing that is essential, this is the last thing on this section, is food. So that's kind of obvious. So what you want to look for in your food is that it has fish products and also protein. You want to have look for around 40% in protein. And by fish products, I mean, well, on my fish food, it's got the first 3 ingredients are krill, herring, and squid. These are the good parts of the food, I guess you could say. This is what you need to look for. So just fish products. Because, and you have to keep in mind that Betta fish are carnivores. They don't eat plant food. So, yeah, you got to look for things without plant substances. But yeah, and I would recommend New Life Spectrum. This is a brand of fish food, and that's the one I use. The reason being because it has good ingredients and basically just good nutritional value. So if you want your fish to be happy and healthy, I would recommend these pellets. You don't have to specifically get Betta fish pellets. Just try and find some small tropical fish ones. The ones I use are surface feeder formula because I couldn't find the Betta fish ones, but this works the same. It has the same ingredients. Also, you want to try and feed a variety. If you can, you don't have to, but you can get 2 different types of pellets, so you can feed like alternate between them, but you don't have to. It's just good because some brands will have more of this like X ingredient, which is good, and some brands will have more of Y ingredient. So it's good to alternate, but you don't have to. But if you do feed like one brand of pellets, like I think you should. You don't have to, but I would recommend feeding frozen bloodworms. Reason being because well, they have good stuff in them. They're natural, I guess, because they're I guess, yeah, it's just more natural than pellets in my opinion. But don't overfeed. So I would say maximum 2 times a week, maybe 2 to 4 per sitting. So don't overfeed these because they are more of a snack or treat than anything, but they are still good for your fish. Just don't do too many. And don't feed freeze-dried. I wouldn't recommend freeze-dried bloodworms. Reason being because they have low nutritional value. Because of the way they're processed, it removes a lot of the nutritional value. And another thing is because they're much more easier to cause bloating. Because if you don't soak them properly before you feed your fish, they'll expand within your fish's stomach, and it will cause bloating, and it can cause other digestive issues. So really, it's just easy to avoid them, and use frozen bloodworms. So those were the essentials. Those are the things that you need. So let me just quickly go through. That's a tank, a heater, a thermometer, a filter, a dechlorinator, a net, a liquid testing kit, and food. So the next thing are non-essentials. Now, if you are going to get non-essentials, there are some important points in what you do get as well. Alright, well, the first thing is substrate. Now, substrate refers to like gravel, sand, or soil. But if you're going to use lots of live plants, or if you know you're gonna be growing plants, I would recommend aquarium soil because this can hold nutrients as opposed to gravel. Gravel can't hold nutrients. It doesn't like have that capacity. So if you're gonna have lots of live plants, but if you're just gonna have beginner or low maintenance plants, then gravel is fine. Especially especially for things like Anubias or Java moss. These things don't require much, so you can use gravel. But if you're going to have lots of plants, you could use gravel, but I think soil, you'd be better off using soil. Now, I don't know much about sand, so I'm not going to type about that. I haven't used sand. I've only used gravel and soil before. Another thing I just want to mention about substrate is that it also holds some beneficial bacteria. That's an important thing. So if you're going to choose to have a substrate or not, if you just remember that it is good for that thing. It does hold beneficial bacteria. So another thing is decorations. So if you're going to use things like plastic plants or whatever, don't use plastic. Basically, that's the number one thing. Reason being, it tears your beeter's fins. Because their fins are really delicate, they're very thin, it can easily tear their fins, and this also makes them more susceptible to diseases like fin rot. So use silk instead for things like plants, or live plants, of course, that's an alternative. And use ornaments that don't have sharp edges. Same concept. Just don't use anything with a sharp edge. And that's pretty much it for decorations. Don't use like random things lying around your house. Think that's going to look pretty. Try and look for things that are specifically for fish from aquarium shops, because there are some things that will peel or have a toxic substance or made out of something toxic that can harm your fish. So the last thing in non-essentials is a light. So if you're growing aquarium plants, a light is good to use, I guess. But basically, this is more if you have low maintenance plants, again like Anubias or Java moss, you don't really need a light. But if you're going to be using, if you're going to be growing higher maintenance plants that need lights, then you should get one, a strong one that's for plant growing, depending which ones again that you grow. So you can just find that out through your research when you're looking at what plants you want to get. But otherwise, it's not essential. But what I do want to mention is that betta fish do go to bed and wake up on a schedule. So you want to keep a consistent lighting schedule. So what I mean by that is, if you're using like the light that comes from the window or your room or something, just make sure you've got you let your fish get like 12 hours daylight, 12 hours sleep or something like that. Make sure it's not constantly, the light's not constantly on, then off, then on, then off throughout the day, because that will confuse your fish. So yeah, they sleep and wake up like we do. So maybe you want to manipulate the lighting so that your fish wakes up when you do and goes to bed when you do. So yeah, that's what I mean by that. So again, remember the essentials are a tank, a heater, thermometer, filter, dechlorinator, a net, a testing kit, and food. And then the other things you can get is substrate, decorations, and a light. So that's all for this video. I might have missed something out. I have no idea, but I think that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, feel free to post in the comments, or if you have any video suggestions or anything like that.